Book report. It's a book report. It's a book report about a movie, 'cause that makes sense. Welcome back, everybody, to the Reel Weirdos. Today, it's Alex and I giving you a book report about a movie, because that makes sense. We're English majors. We're 1.5 white men. I was gonna say 2.5 white men, but Jeff's not here.
Yeah.
And today we're talking about Stalag 17 from 1953, from director Billy Wilder. And I had you watch this because you were a big Great Escape fan.
Yeah.
And I was like, you should see Stalag 17, because it's basically the tonal, the everything precursor to The Great Escape, right?
Definitely. I didn't even realize that this movie was that much older. Also, I just want to say, finally, we're doing a movie from, like, the golden age, right? I don't know if we've done a movie this old before, but you and I, like, privately, we talk back and forth all the time about all the old films that we've seen and whatnot. And, I mean, we've talked about it before on the podcast. I don't know where you are in your, progression through time. I think that took just a detour for now, but
so yeah, a little bit of history. I started, it was like a pandemic project where I don't know, I love cinema, I love film, and I wanted to get a holistic view, and this was just sort of like a me maintaining sanity thing as well, where I decided to start in the golden age, the golden year of cinema, 1939, compile a list and start moving chronologically forward through it. And the list just keeps growing, because I'll be like, oh, I like that actor, or I like this director. Like, who's Billy Wilder? I'm going to add all his movies to the list. And going through it in true, spectacular nerd fashion through a fucking Excel spreadsheet. So now I've made it from 1939 to 1964, I believe I'm in. I'm starting into the James Bond era. Where colorization and wide aspect ratios are becoming more of the norm, and it's really fun. And that's I started journaling this kind of thing in the old One More Take website, which is now defunct, but that gave birth to the One More Take podcast, which we started, and then we found out there were a couple other ones named that, so then we rebranded to Reel Weirdos.
There were a few more One More Takes, people, so we had to switch it up.
Yeah, I guess I didn't do my research.
Oh, it's fine. I mean, the internet is vast and humongous.
It's vast. Nobody out there better take the Reel Weirdos and pass us. It wouldn't be that hard. We don't have that many subs.
Well,
but I'd send them a nice email, be like, please.
I know, seriously. You are all much more handsome and better spoken than us.
Well, I don't know about those things. Maybe just more popular. But yeah, so that's, and you're right. We haven't done an old movie, mostly because Jeff is not interested, I don't think, in doing them, which is fine. It's totally fine. But you and I are definitely more keyed into this era. We've seen Billy Wilder movies. We'll get into his career a little later after we talk about the film, I think, or maybe during. We'll see how it goes. But, what did you think of Stalag 17?
So, I loved it. It was so good.
I knew you would.
I mean, the little twists at the end. I mean, the twists throughout were amazing. But I want to say that, really quick, to compare it, I guess, to my experience with The Great Escape, I actually think that it's a little more fun than The Great Escape. It's a little more not action-packed, excuse me. It's a little more fast-moving. And for some reason, The Great Escape felt more like, to me, the focus was on how cool all of the characters were. Like, Charles Bronson's a badass. And Steve McQueen is, this steely leader of a gang of hoodlums. And it ended a little more seriously. And I think maybe it was more serious in tone. This one, however, was amazing because the characters were all so rich on their own, and the focus was not on each of them necessarily and their stories, but it was more, the focus was on this huge, it's like a whodunit kind of thing. They're trying to figure out who the spy is within their barracks and whatnot, and the focus was all on this unraveling of this mystery. And it was almost like
Yeah.
a mystery movie. And like you accused different characters at different times of being the double agent and whatnot.
Right.
I don't know. I think this movie was probably better than The Great Escape.
Wow, that's a big claim,
Yeah.
my friend.
But I think that The Great Escape is honestly more accessible to film audiences overall and more accessible today.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. Because it and that makes sense, right? Because it has actors that are still have a little more resonance now than, William Holden, I suppose. So you have Steve McQueen and Charles Bronson and stuff, but it's also color and it's wide aspect ratio. This is like
Yeah.
an old movie, and it looks like an old movie because it's black and white. It's 4:3. There are some elements in it that really feel dated. We'll get into that, but in a good way. And to your point about it feeling tighter than The Great Escape, it is 2 hours as opposed to 3, I believe The Great Escape is. The Great Escape is a perfect movie, though, and it earns every second of it. But, yeah, and it has this comedic element that The Great Escape kind of has. It's more tonal in The Great Escape, though. Like, it has this sort of a whimsical nature and this repetition that happens as Steve McQueen gets caught again and sent back to the cooler. They toss him his baseball and glove as the theme song plays, and you're just like in for the ride, and it's really fun. This movie is more of a comedy. It's like an ensemble whodunit comedy that takes place in a Stalag or a German prison camp for American prisoners.
An officer's prison camp, which is interesting. They're all sergeants, right? Which comes into play later. It's interesting because the way I like how you talked about the aspect ratio. The way that they designed the sets in this film were, I thought, beautiful. Every time I was in the barracks, the American barracks, I was like, I don't know, they're all the little trinkets all on the walls. The way that they have like the focus of the film is down like, or the focus of the frame is down the main little hallway between everyone's bunks, and it gives the room so much space and depth. And like they were able to shoot a multitude of scenes in that same room where I felt like I was in a different place each time. And it's kind of like when you go into like an Applebee's, not an Applebee's, but like a non-franchise chain restaurant like that, and there's like kitschy shit all over the walls. I love that shit, by the way. So seeing it in black and white was even more amazing because my brain was able to just fill in all of these colors and like whatever that canteen was hanging on the wall or whatever those, posters next to Animal's bedroom or his little bed bunk were. So I love the set design. I love the way that they had everything shot. I think that the writing was just a little snappier and a little better than The Great Escape. It was a little more captivating to me. And I mean, Billy Wilder and Edwin Blum, right? They're not like slouches, so that makes sense.
Billy Wilder is known for his snappy dialogue.
Yeah.
In fact, it goes so far into the snappy direction that I think some of his later films become unwatchable.
Okay.
But we'll get into that. I think this movie is perfectly balanced because it has that comedic tone. It has amazing scenes where you see these characters interacting. You're never like expressly told who these people are, but it does a great job in just expressing it in a nonverbal way, just through the performances, through the little visual tics. And that does tie in as well to what you're saying, which is like the visual element of this film, like the visual storytelling is really strong. I like your point as well about it sort of being like a hemmed-in location. I hadn't really thought about that, but that is something I really love, and I think it's the hallmark of a really great director when they can take one single location and make it feel fresh the whole time. Some of my favorite examples of that are like 12 Angry Men is probably the best example, but then you also have more contemporary examples like The Hateful Eight by Tarantino.
I was going to go even say ones that are maybe less, that are not as good as those films that you just mentioned. But there are movies like
Panic
Phone
Room?
Booth, Panic Room. You know, I think Birdman was actually a great movie, but that movie is like, for some people, it's hard to watch.
You're talking about Birdman of Alcatraz.
No, excuse me.
Oh, you're talking about Birdman.
By Iñárritu, the one with Michael Keaton. It all takes place within the theater, you know?
There are times when he's out on the streets. And there's
it's
a
just
more,
one
like,
shot, though.
varied location in terms of, like, the studio, you know?
Oh, yeah. But the camera follows him when he goes out into the street. So it's like you were in the studio and then you go, or the playhouse, and then you go out into the street.
Yeah, excuse me.
And it like turns back around and goes back in. And when they do that, it's like it was very claustrophobic to me. But no, I mean, Rear Window is probably another, perfect example of this. That movie is, for some people, really hard to sit through. I love it. I think it mimics, the being sitting in the back of the window with a cat
masterpiece.
Perfectly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this film, Stalag 17, does it in a very similar way, but it does it without color and it does it without that aspect ratio, and it's just fucking genius. I loved it. But Shapiro and Animal, going to your snappy dialogue comment, at the beginning, I was like, okay, can these two just slow down a bit?
You're worried that they would be just a little too much, a little overbearing with their da-da-da-da routine.
But it actually ended up being totally fine and working out. I think Animal, the character, the guy who played him, was, I can't think of his name right now, but holy shit, Robert Strauss is his name, excuse me.
What a performance, right?
Yeah, his face, like the movement of his body, just the way he'd hold his underbite, his lower lip would just, protrude like in every scene. It was perfect. And then I really liked your point actually about how the characters kind of came alive subtly in their own ways, but like really strongly and effectively. Like William Holden's character, instantly I was like, okay, here's Mr. Too Cool, right? Like he's not in on the camaraderie. He has his own little corner. He's got his distillery. He's got
just
his
in it to win it.
Exactly. And I was like, okay, so many characters in cinematic history, prison movies, war movies, whatever, have a character like this that I'm almost positive you could trace back to William Holden's character in here.
Oh, dude, 100%. I was thinking about that, especially John Malkovich in Empire of the Sun.
Exactly.
Like, definitely Spielberg had some influence of Stalag here. It's like kind of the same character.
Oh, it's spot on almost. Like even the American barracks in Empire of the Sun have to be an homage to this movie. Like when Christian Bale's character goes from the English barracks, which are all, grim, proper, and stiff upper lip, he then goes to the American barracks and it's just cacophony of it's like a radio
madhouse.
pans, like cigarettes, people are shaving, playing card games, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm biased, we're biased, but that's the type of patriotic, emblematic symbolism that I'm like, ooh, I like that. That makes me feel American.
Yeah, we'll talk about the characters. I want to go into the visual filmmaking a little bit first, because we did touch on that. And I don't know, it is tremendous. I noted one moment especially that was really great visual filmmaking where they're out in the yard and the sergeant, the German whatever commander, I don't know, military ranks, is just telling them they won't get anything for Christmas except the delousing. An Animal chucks that one guy's flute at him,
Joey,
into the mud.
Yeah.
And it's like, who did that? Step forward. An Animal steps forward and then everyone else steps forward. And I thought that was it reminded me of Kurosawa, right? Where what Kurosawa did was have a reaction shot, but instead of have one person do it, he'd have 8 people do it to bolster the reactivity and the feeling from the audience.
Oh, yeah.
And so it did that, but it also showed that these guys are all in it together.
Oh, 100%.
And it's you didn't get that through some speech where we're all in it together. It was represented visually, and that carries over throughout the whole film. It's interesting to see that this movie that, I don't know, for some people will probably look archaic because it is old, and you'll have those static shots where it's just a scene happening and the camera's not super dynamic, but everything is positioned so well, and it's so well constructed if you're looking for it, that it's just like a pleasure to watch at all times.
Oh, that scene that you're talking about, even like the first, when you see animals step forward, it's a shot from the angle as if you were the German commandant, right? And then his buddy steps forward, and then you see 8 other people from like Barracks 4 step forward, and then the camera changes and it's over the entire yard, and then you see everyone step forward. And so that stepped, like sequenced visual filmmaking, I think is also like really emblematic of the time period. And I was going to ask you, do you think that that was something they had to cleverly figure out on their own because of like, I don't know how to say this really. It's not necessarily like a lack of visual cues for the audience, but the way that technology is now, you can like visualize and manifest anything you want for the audience, right? Like, it almost feels like cheating. And when I watch films like this, I'm reminded of almost how beautiful simplicity can be in filmmaking, right? And like how beautiful something like visual storytelling can be compared to like a fucking speech, you know, that riles up the popcorn eaters and whatnot.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd segment it by era quite like that. I think you're going to have masters of the craft in any era and people who just rely on really obvious dialogue in any era. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. But it did call to mind there's another one where two of the guys escape in the beginning of the film, and then they're out in the yard and they see the bodies. And the camera slowly pans from one character to the next as they go, like they nudge each other, like, "Hey, look at it." And that also ties into the storyline as well, because when you have every character seeming to be on the same page, not just because they're Americans in this situation, but represented visually as well, like you have this sort of group mentality in the visual filmmaking represented there. It makes it that much harder to figure out who the traitor is, you know, because they're all just on the same page cinematically.
I was going to say, I was watching this film with my girlfriend, and we were going back and forth about all of those things. Because I was like, could it be Duke? Because the reason that Duke initially set my radar off, because he was so loud about it, right? And he was so adamant about catching the traitor. And I was like, okay, well, that is like a well-known tactic of, you know, just be the accuser and then no one will ever expect you. But then I was like, you know, that's too easy, because he seems like he actually genuinely cares about everyone. And then I was like, what if it's fucking... I already crossed Animal off the list because I was like, no, he's just too...
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
that would have been a wild surprise. It was actually Animal the whole time.
God, that would be heartbreaking. He was just too much of like a happy-go-lucky guy that I was like, no. But I was thinking for a second, I was like, what about Shapiro? You know, because like he's like always running his mouth and like wheeling and dealing or something. But then I got into the historical aspect of it.
That wouldn't have been satisfying.
Well, also...
He's a Jew, right?
Exactly. Do you really think that a Jew, of all people, would, you know, be the one to be a traitor and side with the Nazis? I don't think so. This is a huge historical assumption. I'm not trying to be offensive with it. It's just when I was watching the movie with the historical context, trying to figure out who the traitor was, I was like, it's like you said, it was perfect. I was like going through all of these characters and giving them like a rundown, you know? But each character was so on the surface visually inconspicuous that it was really, really hard. Like at one point I even thought it was Sefton before everyone started to accuse him.
The red herring.
You get all this shit. You obviously are buddy-buddy with some of these people. And then, I don't know. Can we just say, too, I mean, I love how you brought it back to the visual and the narrative aspect, because the next big thing you see is the light bulb and the chess piece, right? Which does its own visual explanation without having to talk about it at all.
I have a note on that. So this was originally a stage play, Broadway production by Donald Bevan and Edmund Tritsky. I'm saying that wrong because I cannot pronounce it. I think it's Polish or something.
Okay.
Those TRZCs, man. I have no idea.
Consonants, man. They ever heard of a vowel?
That element precisely was him overhearing dialogue in the play. And Billy Wilder was like, no, we got to do this because I'm a master of cinema.
Oh, that's
we got to do it this
beautiful.
way. Yeah, you see, it's even the shadow. He sees the shadow of it moves up from his bunk. It's beautiful. Going back real quick to figuring out who it was, I can't remember what my thought process was the first time I saw it.
Okay.
Because that was some time ago. It was over a year ago when I first saw it. But this time, I think, it was cool looking. It is a cool movie to revisit because it is one of those, like, oh, you can, like, you know who did it, so you can kind of look for signs.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not exactly clues or anything like that until the reveal. But that guy, I can't remember his name, but he's
Price.
just so... Price. He's so straight-laced, so just, I'm American, man. And something about his, like, stature and the blonde hair, I was like, I think it's there. Like, he's the one who looks the most like a Nazi. You know what I mean? He has the genealogy.
He was wearing, okay, so if you notice, like you said, his clothes are always really clean. And they're always like, they're kind of like, they're not pressed, right? But he is more put together than the rest of them. You know, fucking Duke always looks like he just worked on underneath a car for like 10 hours.
He
like,
does.
Animal
Smoking
looks like...
Dunhills.
Exactly. Animal looks like he rolled around in the leftover of Duke's work, you know,
right.
like for 10 hours. I mean...
Just falling in mud all the time.
Exactly. And Sefton is a little put together, but I attributed that more to his coolness. But yeah, Price, he's interesting. I mean, it's hard because now I know. But with him, he would do this thing where he would be speaking, but he'd be looking off into the distance. Not at anyone, but like kind of past the camera. And I only picked up on that when it became more apparent that, you know, he was indeed the traitor. But I wanted to say that visual cues and clothing lead an audience into either comfort, where they can be easily like swayed to not think that a character is important, or vice versa. And with Price, his clothes are always different than the other characters. It's all in black and white, right? It's hard to see the exact colors.
I did not pick up on that. I can tell you though, they did a sort of a sorry, what's the movie with Kevin Spacey, Usual Suspects?
I was just gonna bring that movie up too, yeah.
So an interesting thing is that they did a Usual Suspects routine in the making of this movie. I'm just going to read it here. But in order to keep the actors' reactions of the film's plot twists as close to genuine as possible, the film was shot in sequential order. So the inference there is that the actors did not know who the traitor was, which I love.
Oh, that's amazing. So like not even Price, huh?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how that works in terms of adapting it from a play. I don't know the technicalities here. I'm just reading IMDb factoids, but I don't know. So there is some, I don't know, contention in those two elements, but I like to assume that they didn't know. Just makes it more fun.
Honestly, I think that's beautiful. And if anything, it just makes the visual aspect of this film like even better or more rich. And when we say visual here, because I'm just saying it because lack of a better word, we don't mean like the, you know, actual cinematography or like the actual, how do I say this, like visual quality of the film. It's more about the way that they set things up visually, like a stage play, to help further the plot along.
Yeah, what do you call that? It's not set design, it's not blocking, it's sort of a mingle of these things. It's just, I don't know, filmmaking, shot composition, I guess.
Yeah, it's like storyboarding in a way where you would read a play and then it seems like Billy Wilder, you know, just rearranged the blocks. And he did it in a way that was, I don't know, it made it more genuine for the audience. Because, like, this movie it's hard to figure out what's going on at first. Is it a comedy? Is it just like a fun little, they keep trying to escape? Like, are they going to pull a fast one over the guards? Like, what is going on? And then you realize it's this deep and like interconnected traitor plot. And then, I don't know, the total focus for me was like, I don't care if they escape. I just want them to find the rat and like get him out.
Or just have fun. It's like a character movie as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, it's a character movie, and it's also like, I don't know, I would classify it almost as a hangout movie, which is weird because it's just taking place in a prison camp, but the way that they all interact with each other and they have these little parties and like the shenanigans that they get up to, whether that's brewing hooch or like looking through Sefton's spyglass at the Russian lady prisoners camp and howling like fucking monkeys. I love that shit. It's much fun.
I mean, so it's really hard not to talk about Empire of the Sun with this film. The scenes in that film are like running through my head as we're talking. And that movie too is, I mean, that movie is long as fuck. It's like 3.5 hours. It's an epic film, and there are a lot of themes, and it's way more serious, but there are moments that are like directly pulled from Stalag 17. And there is moments in Empire of the Sun where it is just a hangout movie. It's just Christian Bale and Malkovich and the other sidekick guy just hanging out with each other. They hang out at the barracks when they finally get captured. And I don't know, it's just so interesting to see a movie that is from this time period, because people think that the storylines are kind of bland, or they can be kind of straightforward, like it's very linear.
Or boring. People say old movies are boring.
Yeah, it's like point A, point B, you're done, right? So this film just is, I don't know, it's so rich, and it's sad because I don't know if I've seen a film with so many talented actors that give each other so much space to breathe and grow and like be really dynamic with each other without it being like, in today's parlance, I guess you would call it an ensemble movie, right?
100%, yeah.
And it's irritating to me that like I can't get a film with a bunch of good actors that just disappear from their A-list celebrity identity.
What would be the closest analog in like the 21st century? I don't know, like Ocean's 11? I have no idea.
I mean,
the remake of The Magnificent Seven?
Those are good shouts though, right? Because it is kind of like that. I mean, Quentin Tarantino's movies are less ensemble than this because the characters don't like interact in the same room at all times together in every one of his movies.
Yeah.
His films are stock full of great actors and great characters as well. I mean, I was gonna say,
I think the closest you get is like Reservoir Dogs, because they're all interacting and you're trying to figure out the traitor. Of course you do have that. It's more chronologically dissociated because it has the flashbacks and all that stuff, but I could see that one when they're in the parking garage.
I mean, Wes Anderson obviously loves to put his ensemble cast together, but it's gotten to the point and it's not Wes Anderson's fault. It's through no fault of his own. It's just the status of some of these actors now. It just is like really like jarring. Like, I get Bill Murray, I get Owen Wilson and Jason Schwartzman. Cool, I can deal with that. But when Chalamet starts popping up, Jeffrey Wright, Tilda Swinton, Frances McDormand even, who's been in Wes Anderson films and has disappeared into her role perfectly fine before. It's just, I don't know. I just think it speaks to the quality of maybe the industry and of Hollywood in general. When Billy Wilder was writing films, he had a pool of actors he could choose from that were all just so fucking good. There's like no other way to say it.
Yeah, I looked up a lot of these guys. I looked up Animal specifically, and I've maybe seen him in one other thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. And I was surprised. I was like, this guy, I guess he was just a small character actor who just had this bigger role in this movie. I'm not sure. But yeah, man, do you have a favorite character?
Sefton, easy.
Sefton, for sure.
I mean, William Holden was just so cool. And I loved the sea change in his character. It goes from Mr. I don't give a fuck, the war's going in a bad way, we're gonna lose. He's not betting, but he's taking bets of saying like, those two guys are gonna die. They're not gonna make it out of here at the very beginning. And like, it's grim, but he's obviously the pessimistic realist. But then, when he gets accused of being the one, he's like, you know what, fuck it, we're gonna find out who this fucking traitor is. And like, he goes into full like spy mode, right? And he takes a beating. He's like the wronged man. I mean, he is a primary target. He is a good suspect, I will say. But I don't know.
It's just way too obvious.
I know, and he's just way too cool, man. So I really loved Sefton. And Duke was actually, I thought he just had really good energy as well. He was a good anchor of the film to like snap me back into what it was about. Because he would always be like furious with just the situation, throwing books at Sefton but oh fuck. Sorry.
Yeah, you got another one?
I have one more person. I have to give him a shout out.
Otto Preminger?
No, it's William Pearson's character, and he is Marco the Mailman.
Oh my! I have him in my notes. I have Addies. That's literally in my notes, and I was gonna ask you, did people ever actually talk like that? It is so 1950s.
His
Addies, hey, say. You're like, no, you can't. That cannot be your voice.
It's like more James Cagney than James Cagney.
Oh, it's James Cagney dialed up to like 9,000.
It's insane. But I loved him. He was good.
Speaking of James Cagney, I want to get into Billy Wilder a little bit. Wait, before that, actually, hold the phone. Okay, so there are a few moments in this movie where I felt that it was like, I'm not saying this as a bad thing, but just like it felt antiquated. Like, oh my God, I'm watching a 50s movie. That was one of them. The other one was when they all ran out. They're like, the Russian female prisoners are here. And they all rush out and they're hooting like animals.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is probably not how this whole thing would go down in real life at all. This was probably like a depressing, miserable nightmare. And it's fine to not represent it like that. I know it's a comedy and everything. But that was one of the moments where I was like, this is an older movie.
Oh, 100%. I mean, even like the jovial spirits of everyone Animal would not have that much meat on his bones. Like, it's just the food rations of being a prisoner of war was like, you would lose weight, you were skinny. And yeah, there was some probably really nice times of camaraderie and like joy, but standing out doing
Betty Grable.
Yeah, right?
Betty Grable.
That woman that showed up, the Brick Kremlin, the blonde Russian, her hair was like all permed and pressed, like
the Russian ladies. I was like, those
God.
ladies look way too good.
Oh, they do, of course, right?
For
like
POWs,
they would look absolutely they'd be just as miserable as all of them.
Well, this is like the precursor not only to classic movies like The Great Escape and Empire of the Sun, and probably a lot more that we're not thinking of. It's also like the dawning of Billy Wilder's, I don't know, you can see the elements of him being a sex comedy director.
Yeah.
Just beginning to flourish here. And just a tiny bit, just enough. It's great for this movie. But I do want to talk about him, if you're cool with moving it on.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's a legend.
He's a legend. He's one of the greatest of all time, but it is uneven. So I've seen almost all his movies. He starts out with some interesting ones like Five Graves to Cairo, and then you have like a couple of the best noir movies ever. You have Double Indemnity in 1944 with the great Fred McMurray.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course Sunset Boulevard in 1950. Absolute 10 out of 10 amazing movie. We should honestly cover that at some point.
Yeah.
Ace in the Hole, which is where Kirk Douglas plays this amoral, like, newspaper man trying to get a story. He'll do anything to get a story. Okay. Then you have Stalag 17. And then it starts to get weird where he goes into, like, more of an absolute comedic direction. Whereas things like Sunset Boulevard and Ace in the Hole are, like, completely straight, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
You get things like Sabrina, which I'm okay with because it is Audrey Hepburn, and she does fall in love with an old man, but it's Humphrey Bogart, so I'm okay with that because I love Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
But then there are movies that I cannot stand, which like 1, 2, 3, or sorry, 1, 2, 3. That's bringing it back to Jimmy Cagney, where he's like a Coca-Cola executive, and the whole fucking movie is like the mailroom guy from Stalag 17 just shouting.
Oh, really?
I made it through 10 minutes, and I was like, I have to shut this off.
Shit.
I was like gonna throw something out the window. It was so fucking annoying. And he does this with his characters. Like, Some Like It Hot is amazing. But The 7-Year Itch, which is the classic Marilyn Monroe skirt movie, dress movie,
with Tom Ewell.
I cannot stand that movie. You know this.
Yeah.
I think it's just because I hate that character so much. I hate that character with every inch of my being. He's so nebbish and so pathetic that it's like I can't even focus on what's working in the movie because I dislike the character. I think he made the character he wanted to make. I just hated it. And then after that, it just goes into like a series of sex comedies starring Jack Lemmon.
I have a theory that I don't know the box office return for his other films, but going back to Stalag really quick, that film was $1 million to make, around 1.5. It made $10 million, almost 1,000% return. And it's like, if a studio sees that and is like, oh man, the snappy like comedy dialogue is really putting butts in the seats, you know, I could have seen it like kind of steer even Billy Wilder himself being like, holy fuck, I did not expect to get a check this big, to like sway him that way. I would like to think that Billy Wilder wasn't as, craven as to just,
No, I think he made the movies he wanted to make. They just became less interesting to me because they're just, for like, I don't know, a lot of them are just silly comedies.
So Aaron Sorkin is someone who's a little more contemporary, who I feel like draws a lot from Billy Wilder. If you ever watch The West Wing or any of the movies that he did in like the early 90s.
Can you name some for me?
The West Wing is 100% like Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah, but I ain't seen that. Name a movie.
So
let me look this up.
Charlie Wilson's War is one. A Few Good Men. He did Moneyball, and he did Steve Jobs with a Fassbender, not with Ashton Kutcher.
Moneyball, Social Network.
He wrote The Social Network. Yeah. He worked with Fincher.
Yeah.
So you can, in The Social Network, that's a good example, actually. I don't know how much of it is Jesse Eisenberg's like way of playing characters, because he's kind of like this, but the dialogue is snappy in that film. And Aaron Sorkin likes to have characters talk a lot, and his screenplays are known for like 2 or 3 characters at all are speaking on one page, which is a big deal, like in Charlie Wilson's War, he has Philip Seymour Hoffman and Tom Hanks just like riffing off each other the whole time, and some of it borders into like the silly fast-paced comedy of Billy Wilder, but he's a little more modern, a little more contemporary. But to go back to Billy Wilder, I feel like to go from Sunset Boulevard, which is dark, it's a dark film.
And it's his best,
oh, 100%,
in my opinion.
Easy.
Yeah.
Like, it has to be.
This might be a close second, though.
Oh, yeah. This movie was so fun, but Sunset Boulevard is...
Shout out to The Lost Weekend as well. I forgot that one. That's one of the best drunk movies ever.
Did you like Love in the Afternoon with Gary Cooper?
I hated it.
Okay.
I hated it thoroughly. I could not watch it. I think it's because it's like... I was not a fan of Audrey Hepburn falling in love with Gary Cooper, who looks like he smells like fucking mothballs. He's like 109 years old, and she's like this goddess, and he's just like, oh, I'm an old playboy, and you're like, fuck you. And I was like, why do I care about this romance? Yeah, that might be the worst one I've seen from him.
Okay, because like that one came out right before the 7-Year Itch, so I was like...
Came out 2 years after.
Oh, did it?
It came out after Sabrina.
Oh, it did. Okay. Yeah,
Wait. I'm getting my... Yeah, no. Yeah, it came out...
57 it came out, and 7-Year Itch came out in 55, so you're right. Yeah. Okay. Because like that era of Billy Wilder movies is probably my least favorite out of the ones that I've seen.
Spirit of St. Louis with Jimmy Stewart. That movie is so fucking boring. It's so badly casted. It's Jimmy Stewart playing Charles Lindbergh, who's supposed to be like 27, and it's like 60-year-old Jimmy Stewart, and the movie's just bad.
No way. That's amazing.
I think it was a director for hire thing. I think Billy Wilder came in at the last minute or something like that. I can't remember, but it's not good. Don't watch it.
It's interesting that he just started to go off kind of on this thing with Peter Sellers, because I love Peter Sellers. I mean, I think the guy's hilarious, but the 60s seems to be a weird time for Billy Wilder.
Did he use Peter Sellers a lot? I haven't seen those movies. You talking about Walter Matthau?
Walter Matthau, sorry.
Yeah, he starts making like all his movies from like the
Jack
60s
Lemmon
on.
too, sorry.
Seems to be like Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau movies.
That's who I'm talking about. Sorry.
Yeah,
Not
these are
Peter
like my
Sellers.
grandma's favorite movies, you know. And you're like, Grandma, these are not Stalag 17. These are not Sunset Boulevard.
So I haven't looked really much into like his legacy or like who he has influenced, but I'm sure it's humongous.
I mean, if you're any director of note who makes like snappy romance comedies, then he's definitely an influence. But he's also an influence if you make noir, which is a weird juxtaposition because of his early movies. Like we keep saying, Sunset Boulevard, but also Double Indemnity. Those are absolute like poster book noir. And one could even make the argument that Double Indemnity is like the original noir.
Yeah. Did it come out before like the Maltese Falcon?
No. So you're right. Maltese Falcon 100% has got to be. That's a perfect movie as well.
Yeah, that movie is great. It's funny because I started off not liking Humphrey Bogart at first because I had seen like, Casablanca's Casablanca, but like to see it over and over as like a kid because it's like a family's favorite movie. It's like, I don't know. I wasn't interested in it.
Well, you had fucking Stockholm Syndrome.
I know.
Like, right? Well, I guess then you'd like it.
Do you think that The Big Lebowski has any Billy Wilder in it at all?
Do I think the Coens have Billy Wilder?
Yeah.
Maybe?
I mean,
I'm sure that they're fans.
It's kind of a hangout
They're
movie.
100% fans of certain Billy Wilder movies. I could say that much. You'd be hard-pressed to find a director who's of a certain age that isn't a fan of Sunset Boulevard, for instance.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know that movie like kind of set David Lynch on like his whole like passion for filmmaking, and not just that film, but I know that it really like invigorated him when he was younger.
Really?
Yeah. Oh,
wow,
yeah.
I did not know that.
And also, I will want to say, I guess I haven't heard a lot of like shout outs to him explicitly from the film world, but in all of the films I've seen after him, there's something there where Billy Wilder has like left his mark. I mean, we're further moved along now where it's almost like people would say it's Spielberg leaving his mark, you know?
Yeah. I was going to say, I think it might just be time.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so far back now that younger filmmakers are, like, looking up to people like, you know, Spielberg. And maybe even Spielberg and Scorsese will go out of fashion in 10 years. Oh, they're still making movies, so.
Yeah.
Not yet, but I think it's just too far back now. And while Wilder was making movies up until like the early 80s, those aren't the movies people remember.
Yeah.
They're just not. People don't talk about Buddy Buddy or The Front Page besides my grandma, you know?
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, there's something about he was I'm reading into some of his stuff before I watched the movie, and I guess he was like a big antique collector towards the end of his life, or art collector. And he would just had this like insatiable appetite for just collecting all types of art. And now I think of him like in Sunset Boulevard, you know, just this aging director just sitting in his house full of trinkets.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. He won fucking 6 Academy Awards. I know you and I have talked before about our disillusionment with the Academy Awards, but still, man, to win 6 of them.
Oh, I mean, and he was winning them when it was like... It was still...
When it was cool?
Yeah. As Jim Carrey says, you know, when they were still the cool guys.
Wow, The Apartment won Best Picture. How the fuck? I mean, that movie's alright, but it's just about people having sex in Jack Lemmon's apartment.
Wait, is that the one with Shirley MacLaine?
Yeah.
Okay, I have seen that one. I didn't even know that was him.
Yeah, Fred McMurray. But I think that's enough, like, Billy Wilder talk. I want to move on to some awards, if you're into that.
Oh, I'm down.
So, who gets, I mean, okay, our Phil Hoffman Award for Best Performance.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any possible universe where this doesn't go to William Holden?
I mean, if we wanted to really give it to Animal and to Robert Strauss for that just absolutely kinetic display, because there were some films where Philip Seymour Hoffman did unfortunately market to like his like chubbiness, you know, in his films, and his like kind of like slapstickiness. Thinking of like A Long Game Polly, Twister, really
Yeah.
early Philip Seymour Hoffman films.
It was before he was like Capote, you know?
Yeah, and before he did this film where he played a transgender, I believe, prostitute that lived in an apartment building with Robert De Niro, who's a police officer who suffers a stroke, who is then like forced to be under the care of this transgender apartment mate, and it's just total clashing of ideals. And that's really where Philip Seymour Hoffman was like on the scene. Is like they were like, oh, this guy can fucking act. Right. And I don't know, not to get too into the namesake of the award, but William Holden has got to take it, right? Like,
yeah, it has to be Holden.
Yeah,
it just has to be.
Too cool.
He won the Oscar for it.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, you know, I had a trouble at the beginning of the film recognizing him because of his shorter hair. It was just that goddamn face and those dimples. I was like, I know this person. And then I looked it up and I was actually really angry with myself.
Yeah. Dude, side note, I think William Holden was that generation's Robert Downey Jr. Where it's like he just kind of it feels like every character he plays is William Holden. Like it just has his natural charisma and panache and just like feels like who he probably was. Yeah. In the same way that Downey plays Downey. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I feel like I knew a guy that reminded me of William Holden. It was a neighbor, and he used to do construction work with my dad. And he was his name was Steve Sidlick. I don't know if you're still around, Steve, but if you're hearing this, what's up?
Shout out to Steve.
He used to like roll up to my dad's house with a case of beer and a cigarette, just blasting the doors. And then they get to work.
My kind of guy right there. Like, oh my God.
And he had the same kind of like smile or like teeth as William Holden. And I don't know what it was. It was insane. He had this smile that it was like he was like in trouble or like he was doing something mischievous. And I was like, you're cool.
Well, yeah, we'll give the Phil Hoffman Award to William Holden.
Cool.
This one's tough. What's the I Drink Your Milkshake Award for most memorable scene? What does that go to? So I'll let you think.
Yeah.
I thought about this one before I watched the movie. And I was like, what is the one that shines out like from the distance of time? Mm-hmm. The brightest. And it's actually the scene where they're hanging out, getting drunk and dancing. An animal gets drunk and he mistakes, what's his name?
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
He mistakes Harry Shapiro for, Betty Grable.
Yes.
He's like, Betty, and he's like, you have the nicest legs. And he's like, animal, it's me. I don't know.
I love that scene.
I thought that scene was fucking hilarious and so like touching. And it wrapped all these things together where it's like the camaraderie elements, but also like animal being despondent because he hasn't seen a woman in 5 years. And I don't know. It's just very touching, and it's the one I remember the most. So that's what I'm gonna give the award to.
That's a great choice, right? Because you see it a lot in war movies where the buddy tugs at the heartstrings of back home, of images of home, right? Like when we get back home, I'm gonna get you on a date with Betty Grable.
Yeah,
my cousin works with the Los Angeles Water District. We're gonna drive down, and it's like sitting in a foxhole somewhere in the middle of the fucking forest in Europe, or even worse, in a prisoner of war camp, you know?
Yeah.
And hearing something like the sunny sands of LA and being able to roll up to Betty Grable's door is just like a beautiful scene. So yeah, no, I fucking love that shit.
It's really evocative.
Yeah, Shapiro and Animal were so good at that. Like,
if we had a best dynamic award, maybe I think we'll naturally evolve our awards as we go on.
The Batman and Robin Award.
Yeah, the Batman and Robin Award, something like that. Maybe less homoerotic, but we'll find out.
Oh man, so that question though, that's really hard. You know, I think the favorite scene for me, the one that really brought the movie to life, was when Schultz is kicking everyone out and he's finally alone in the barracks, and he looks at the light bulb, straightens it, replaces the queen. Because that one I was like, oh my god, here we go. Like, I have something to look out for. At first I didn't even know if the traitor was real. I thought it was just paranoia from the prisoners.
Oh, interesting.
And then that scene just is like, it's like the pin in the movie. It's just like, I don't know, it just set me off on what I really enjoyed about the film.
Yeah, once it kicks into gear.
Yeah, it's like innocuous, it's not nothing really crazy is going on, but for me that was really cool. I mean, the ping pong balls were cool. I liked the smoke bombs.
Right.
But the egg as well. The cooking of the egg, that solidified.
You like that egg. You started this
man.
morning, you'd message me, you're like, I'm cooking my one egg, got my coffee pot going.
So, I don't know what it is about black and white films, but when I see food in it, my imagination just salivates. Like, the sound of the crackling egg, Animal and Shapiro and all the faces just
hovering over. Yeah. Like, they're like, are you going to eat the shell? He's like, no, go for it.
Like I can feel the residual heat from the stove and oh man, that scene was just beautiful.
Dude, there are so many little setups and payoffs to this movie. I can't even remember all of them. But it's you have a setup for that where it's they have potato soup and the guy's like, anyone want potato soup? And then they're like, no. And it's so bad and so close to water that he just starts cleaning his socks in it.
Oh god. Takes the washboard out and dips it in there.
Yeah.
You see Shapiro and fucking Animal bust in.
They're like, chow time.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I feel like there are more on the periphery of my consciousness. These little things, these little fucking visual things that the characters do that feel like it lends a cohesion to the movie and makes the world come alive. Like when you see little things, I'll point out, in Ace in the Hole, there's a great example of this, where every time one of the characters, I think it's Kirk Douglas, walks into the journaling room, the journalism room, whatever it's called, the newsroom, there's this little door, and he hits it so hard that it smacks, goes bam, and then goes back every single time. And that adds nothing to the movie or the story, but it makes it feel real, and it's this little punctuation mark of reality and comedy that adds an infinite amount of depth to a film.
Oh, absolutely. Perfectly said.
And there were a lot of those in Stalag.
Oh, it's the hallmark of a good artistic storyteller, whether it's visual or even written in literature. There's some authors who can describe the most mundane actions of our lives that make their stories that much realer. And you really get drawn down into the minutia of what it is to be alive and to be human, because you don't walk around thinking about all the time, the big earthly movements and politics of the day, the world conflicts and things like that. Sometimes you're walking down the street and it's something as simple as dodging a pile of dog poop on the sidewalk, or you find a gum wrapper in your pocket. And when an artist can elucidate those things, it makes the world just blow up in my imagination. So I don't know, props to Billy Wilder and all the little visual cues of this film. My brain was filling in colors, honestly. It's in black and white, but there's
You've
so
mentioned
much
that a couple times, that your brain fills in things when it's in color.
The tan of some of the suits some of the jackets they'd be wearing, or the brown leather, and just the steely grays of the Nazi uniform. Even though it's in black and white, something about the mud and the dirt and the spotlights and all the playing with the shadows, there was enough stimulation there visually for me to just do it on my own afterwards.
Yeah, I don't do that. I just kind of let it speak for itself, but I can see where you're coming from. Definitely. For awards, I don't think there's a way to give the Will Smith award for most uncomfortable scene. I don't know if any of the scenes were that uncomfortable.
Even the death scenes weren't that uncomfortable, right? They did it very mutedly, where they had him under the burlap sacks with the you could see his little escape package tied to his ankle when they're all nudging
nice
each
little
other.
Detail.
Yeah, but other than that, there wasn't anything too remarkable.
I don't think we're gonna give that one out today. Same with the Willem Dafoe award for most erotic scene. Although maybe when Shapiro and Animal are dancing and he's complimenting his gams, maybe we could give it to that.
Yeah, that is true.
Or maybe, I don't know, maybe the inference of William Holden going over and having a lovely night with the girls, the Russian girls.
Oh, that's true, actually. That's true.
It's not a scene because we don't see it, but
that's what really set it off, right? Everyone accusing him.
Yeah, that just the right time to do that. And that's our scenes. I have one more element I want to talk about, and then we'll wrap up. And that is the theme song. Now, these old war movies started to do this. The most famous examples are Bridge on the River Kwai and The Great Escape, where you could just like whistle those at any time of the day when you're just doing something. And this movie, I feel like, I don't know. I don't feel like it's absolutely the progenitor of that, but you do have a theme song. It's like the ants go marching one by one, da 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 da, and it comes back like 3 or 4 times. Not to the extent that it does in those movies, but I did want to point it out that I like that. I like that recurring theme, and especially with these old war movies for some reason. And I was wondering if you picked up on that as well.
The fact that that's what Cookie starts whistling after William Holden finally escapes with Dunbar.
Yeah.
It like, I mean, that's how the movie starts, right? With the like the overture and the orchestra playing it, and then they end it with him whistling it. It's interesting because you kind of take whatever folk song or whatever song that the film uses and associate it with the tone of the movie. So like The Great Escape has the nice little, marching whistling thing. And then exactly.
Wait, is that which one? I get messed up with which one is Great Escape and which one is Bridge on the River Kwai, because they're very similar.
Yeah, the Great Escape one is the one with like the whistling.
Yeah,
where it's
they're
like,
both whistling.
So I'll do the Great Escape.
They both
one.
are. Okay.
It's
no, they're subtly different. All right, you and I are gonna settle this later.
Okay.
But for now. Is there any finishing thoughts for Stalag 17?
I mean,
it's just so fucking good.
If you see this film, you gotta go and try and see The Great Escape as well. And this isn't even like a comparison of like, oh, you gotta see which one is better. Both of them are just so good. I just didn't realize how much influence was taken from Stalag 17. I mean, it's impossible not to see it. Like,
do you think it's possible that somebody has seen Stalag 17 and not seen The Great Escape, though, in this day and age, who would be listening to this show?
That's true. I mean, I hadn't seen Stalag 17, but I had seen The Great Escape several times.
Yeah.
But that makes a little more sense, right? Because The Great Escape, like you said, it's in color. Steve McQueen, wide aspect ratio, came out in the 60s. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I think it's almost perfect in the sense that it's so simple that it like, I don't know, it's exactly what I wanted from the film. I got everything I wanted and everything I expected, which is hard to do.
Glad.
It's hard to do with movies, so.
I'm so glad you loved it, man. I'm so glad you loved it. I'm glad I could give you this gift.
Yeah.
Reel Weirdos, the gift that keeps giving.
Exactly.
Except when you watch Gone in 60 Seconds. But no, man, I completely agree. I think it's one of the best movies of the era. I think it's a fantastic ensemble. It's a great character movie. It's a great example of really powerful visionary directing with a limited budget and like the tools of the time. It's just fantastic visual storytelling. Yeah, everything about it is great. I love it. And with that, we will wrap up. What did you think of Stalag 17? Let us know in the comments below. I'm joking, but that would actually be fun if you guys want to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's us, Reel Weirdos, Alex and Jesse, done with our book report about a movie, because a book report about a movie makes sense. And we'll catch y'all in the next one.
All right, enjoy your egg.
Chicka chacka chapo. Now our podcast is done, and we have to run. We know it is sad, but we had so much fun. Don't be bereft, Jesse, Alex, and Jeff. We'll be back real soon. The Reel Weirdos. We talk about movies for way too goddamn long.